Cover crops have grown tremendously in popularity here over the last few years. Today we're going to talk about some of the benefits, some of the drawbacks, and also what different blends or exactly which specific crops should you plant on your farm.
With cover crops, there's a lot of things that you've got to keep in mind, and one of them for me is going to be the rotation. It's the most important thing that we're trying to do here is keep our soil healthy, keep our soil life thriving out in our fields, and protect that soil so that the next time we want to raise a crop, that we can raise a successful one. Now you look at a lot of the farmers that are in a prevent plant situation, maybe that involves some acres on your farm this year. If you've got ground that you're going to leave idle and just leave black all throughout the season, you're really subject to erosion, to losing some of that soil to wind or to water, and you're also subject to microbial life going down in your fields. Like take, for example, phosphorus uptake. A lot of times we'll see this fallow syndrome when we've got the ground not farmed for a year before we plant. Well, what that is it's mycorrhizae fungi that are in the soil actually dying off because they don't have a food source or a host plant to be able to thrive and stay around in your soil. That's where a cover crop comes in. When you're picking a blend, one of the things I'm going to look at is improving soil health and keeping your microbial life going for the next season.
All right, so speaking about that microbial life, mycorrhiza fungi is not supported by crops like radishes, kale, rapeseed, so you've got to be a little bit careful what you're doing for a cover crop blend. Now it's pretty simple really. What our suggestion is always get a grass crop out there, something like a rye or oats. That's what a lot of people in our area are doing this summer, is throwing some oats out and then throwing a little bit of radish along with it. It's no big deal to have a crop that doesn't support mycorrhiza fungi as long as you do have some crop that does support it. So what a lot of people are doing is, let's say 90% oats, 10% radishes. The oats are nice because not only can they help you build soil organic matter and reduce erosion, but also it's a grass crop and it will pull out a lot of nutrients in your soil, like for example nitrogen. And you might think, well, why would I want to pull nitrogen out of my soil? Here's the concern. If you leave that ground black, like Darren was talking about, let's say you've got 5% organic matter soil. Over the course of this summer, you're going to have 100 to 150 pounds of nitrogen that are going to come available. Well, wouldn't it be nice to pull some of that up in the oats, and then as the oats decays over the course of the next year, then that nitrogen, some of that comes back to you. Otherwise, what could happen is if you continue to get lots of rain this summer, that nitrogen that your soil provides all of a sudden leaches away. So that can be a real problem. I like having the radishes out there to help bust up a little bit of soil compaction. That's the #1 reason why we talk about radishes and turnips in a cover crop mix.
Now you may be saying, look, I never plant turnips and radishes. I really don't know anything about those crops. Well, that is a little bit of an area of concern. And one of my biggest concerns with cover crops is that we get planting this blend of things that we've never planted before. So make sure that you're asking your agronomist or your seed provider, all right, how do I kill these things next year so they don't stick around for my crop? And be really careful if there's some crops that you just don't want to go to seed. That's one good way to avoid a problem for next year with an annual crop. Or if you've got a winter annual, hey, here's one I've got to burn down in the fall before I get into the winter, or I have to be ready to do a burn down very early in the spring to prevent a lot of moisture loss for my crop going into the season. So you got to be prepared for those kinds of things and know what blend you're planting.
So for example, in our area, there's a lot of problem controlling clover. Also a lot of problem controlling canola based on the crops that are raised in our area. So why would I throw clover out in this cover crop or canola? I don't want to do that. Vetch is another thing that a lot of times I'll tell people, well, you may not be able to control that the best with your particular rotation, so maybe avoid that as a cover crop. That's where I kind of like the oats and the radish or turnip thing. I can kill those just about any crop that we're going to raise around here. The other thing I would encourage you to consider is usually we talk about, yeah, it's nice to have a legume out there, produce some nitrogen for next year's crop. But let's say that I do have a prevent plant situation. I planted soybeans last year. I'd like to plant soybeans again maybe next year, and I have a lot of soybean cyst nematode in my area. Well, why would I want to put out a host for soybean cyst nematode? Many of the legumes and in the bean family, they can host soybean cyst nematode. So in effect, I haven't really broken my rotation like I would kind of like to. So that's one of the reasons, like on our farm, if I'm going to raise any cover crop now going into next year, I'm probably not going to throw a bean out there because I'm much more concerned about soybean cyst nematode than I was 10 or 20 years ago.
Now the other thing is, if you aren't used to planting cover crops, You got to be smart about this. If you're planting quite a few acres on your farm to cover crops and you say, well, I hear all these other guys are just waiting and they're planting into green cover crop next spring, maybe that's what I'll try. If you've never done it before, do your homework on this, because it's not easy, and it's not like all the guys that are using cover crops regularly got it right the first time. Talk to some other farmers who have been doing cover crops in your area for a long period of time. And if nobody's been doing cover crops in your area, well, talk to somebody from another area of the country and find out, okay, what are you doing? What kind of equipment are you set up with to be able to handle this if I'm going to plant green? Or maybe you'll get advice of, hey, you need to burn that down in the fall. Okay, when is the best time to do that? Because it's going to vary depending on the blend that you're planting. And again, like Brian said, the crop rotation that you're going to be in on your farm.
Yeah, there are a lot of benefits to cover crops. We really encourage you to look at cover crops, especially in a prevent plant situation, or if after harvest in the fall, you've got at least 60 days before freeze up. Cover crops really can be great, but there are also disadvantages like Darren was talking about. You can create more weeds for the spring. You also could have soil that's too dry or too wet in the spring, so you may need to terminate that cover crop in the fall. Lots of different things for you to consider, but again, take a hard look at cover crops this summer.
And one cover crop you do not want to plant is our weed of the week. We'll show you what it is coming up later in the show.